Hello and welcome back to Death and Taxes. This is your weekly live stream podcast from the Australian Taxpayers Alliance. I am one half of your hosting duo, John Humphreys, and joined, as always, by Gene Tunney. Gene, how you doing?
Going well, John. We had a big live stream last week. That went really well, so I'm still on a bit of a high after that. But yes, so looking forward to the nice discussion. I'm sure it'll be a good one. We've got another good guest to talk about topical issues with tonight. So I'm looking forward to it. How about you?
Oh, well, you know my answer, Gene. I'm on top of the world. Another beautiful day in paradise. No, you've set the expectations down, Gene. So we better then perform. I always like to set expectations low so that we can overperform. But you've put us on the hook, Gene. I hope you have your wit turned up to 11 for tonight. We do indeed have another guest today. It's another new guest. This is Graeme Haycroft, who is the man behind the Liberal Reform Association, which has been pushing reform inside the LNP, the Liberal National Party in Queensland. The context of that is there is basically a civil war inside the LNP, and it comes to a head this weekend, this Friday, Saturday, Sunday, long weekend. The LNP civil war will be decided, not in the MMA ring, as might have been more enjoyable to watch, but at their state convention. So Graeme is going to explain that. I don't understand the machinations of how these things work. Graeme does, and he's a participant, so he's going to unravel it all for us so we can see the inside of how the sausage is made. Other topics for today, we are going to, Gene, of course, is going to do his roundup, look at a bit more housing data. Minimum wages have just gone up another 6%. My newsletter today, we looked at an option for how we could get more people building homes without having to rely on bringing in ever more migrants, which is a common meme in the debate. And then we're, of course, going to be taking your questions, dear listener and viewer. Some of the background stuff first. This is put on by the Australian Taxpayers Alliance, www.taxpayers.org. You can also find us on Substack, Oz Taxpayers, AUS taxpayers.substack.com. Please go there, check out what we're doing. If you like what we're doing, please consider becoming a member. A couple of dollars a month really helps us to keep the lights on and keep doing what we're doing. This is being simulcast on YouTube, Facebook, and X, and sometimes on LinkedIn. We'll see if that one kicks in. So wherever you're watching it, please give it a like. Please give it a share. Please boost it around the algorithm. It really does help. Please go and find us on all of those social medias and give us a follow, because that also really does help. So that would be great. As I mentioned at the beginning, the guest today we have is Graeme Haycroft, who's got a few claims to fame. He's done quite well in the business world. Then he went on to do God's work in the labour market world by setting up Red Union. But that's not why we've got him on today. Now it's because of his role and machinations with the Liberal Reform Association. So with that said, welcome.
Well,
Graeme.
thank you very much for having me on. I hope I can help and make it interesting.
Well, as interesting as the internal machinations of politics can be, I admit I find it interesting. We'll see if we can bring the normal viewing public along with us. How's life, Graeme?
Well, it's good. This weekend, it's all coming to a head, I suppose you could say. The Liberal Party, as everyone noticed, is being hollowed out and is essentially, when Menzies formed it in 1944, he had 60,000 members when the population was 6.5 million. So 1%. And the party's been just totally hollowed out, down to less than 25,000. This is before all the people left to One Nation. So it's an organisation where what's happening, everyone needed to concede that it's collapsing. And of course, what they're doing is they're trying to shore up their own positions. And this is a classic example. It's not hard to see what the problems are, but essentially the core system that Menzies had was that he wanted the party to be run by members, right? And the only way you can do it in 1944, when there are very few telephones and very few cars, you had to have a delegate system where there's 100 people in one town, they couldn't all go to a meeting, so they'd appoint delegates to go and represent them, right? And the system went through because it was a sort of like a national system. There were different layers of delegates so that people could be represented. And the idea of the delegate system was goes both ways. And delegates took it all seriously in those days, and they did find out what they wanted, what their members wanted. And Menzies was able to understand and knew what they wanted. That's why he was undefeated in his entire career, because he was always in touch with what his members wanted, and they were a large enough group to represent, be effectively a representation of giant focus group or series of focus groups of the constituents at the time. So anyway, so what's happened is over the years, I'll just cut this quite short. Over the years, the delegate system has become gamed to the point where you have a largely conservative membership who end up appointing delegates who actually aren't conservative at all. So, and you've had the parties which have been taken over by, we use the term moderate or progressives, much to the disappointment of the members, and that people don't understand how they did it. And the past master of this in Queensland, in Australia, is the best did it. Senator McGrath, and let me make it really clear, he hasn't broken any laws, hasn't broken any rules that I know of. He's just worked out that because most of the membership in the Liberal Party, the LNP in Queensland, are all old, and it worked out that if you can get a lot of young people on, as a bit of an army, you can pick up delegates, which are by going to all the AGMs and which are always held at night in cold halls and stuff, and no one wants to go. And the little army of staffers appears, and lo and behold, there's a young person interested, so we point him to be a delegate. And you got to the stage where we had a Senate pre-selection where Matt Canavan was relegated to the second unwinnable spot in Queensland in the Senate pre-selection because McGrath had got all the delegates. And there were a couple of when we amalgamated the party 10 years ago, I think it was whenever it was 10 years ago, wasn't it? No, it was before then, 20 years. However long ago we amalgamated the Liberal and National parties. And there were some aberrations in there, so that you had like the policy standing, or you're on the policy standing committee, you're on the policy committee, John, with the LNP, as I remember.
That was a lifetime ago, Graeme. Don't accuse me of such outlandish things in this audience.
Okay, well, the policy committee system actually worked, but in those days there were about 15 of us, and in the days when you were there, we didn't actually have. We could go and speak at conferences, but we didn't have voting rights. And when the amalgamation came, suddenly, we've got voting rights. And I remember talking to someone saying, "Is this going to be a problem?" He said, "No, it's only small. No, it's 15. It's not going to make a lot of difference. Anyway, 15 is now 30, right?" And so, like in one go, Senator McGrath has managed to capture the entire policy standing committee. And
so I think it's fair to say that the nature of any internal constitution means the people who know the internal rules well are able to game the system and use those rules to their advantage. And the LNP has a system of delegates where not everyone gets an equal vote. People who are delegates get to wield a lot of power, and people who are good at working the internal rules have been able to work that delegate system effectively, very legally and very effectively to their own interest. And I think it would be fair to say, Graeme, that you are helping to lead an alternative vision for what the LNP might look like, which isn't a delegate system, which might have made sense in its day, but becomes more a one person, one vote, one member, one vote. So that sort of takes away the ability to game the system. It's no longer who's best at working out the minutiae of the constitutional rules. It's more who has an idea that is more popular amongst the rank and file membership. Would that be a fair summary of the division?
Good. It's a pretty good summary. Menzies didn't have an online system where you could do it. Today, everyone, probably with a few exceptions in really remote areas, and they can still do proxies, but literally everyone can log on and attend, a convention and vote at the convention. So that removes the tyranny of distance, and that allows everybody in. But you can't game. I mean, there's only probably 5,000 members effectively in the LNP in Queensland now. But you can't game 5,000. You can game 300. Right?
Is it fair to say that as of the last couple of months, Graeme, if there were 5,000, there's now 4,998? I believe you and your fellow co-conspirator who is making this push for internal democracy in the Liberal Nationals, you were shown the door. Is that right?
Yes. Well, before we started, because I could see the problem and I knew what we had to do to bring about the change, effectively make sure the members were represented. Now, we were told that if we went ahead and do that, they would kick us out. So we went ahead and did it. So, but we weren't kicked out, we were suspended. And then Heath and I had a chat, and I said, we're going to be serious about this. We're going to take on the presidency, and because you're going to have to fix it up, and it's going to need some fairly tough and rough and tough decisions. So we announced that we would run as president, and he was going to be vice president. I'm getting on a bit, but I'm still pretty fit, but I wouldn't do it for any more than 12 months. And so we made that bloody clear that we would do it. And then they changed the suspension, and they expelled us. But tomorrow, interestingly, we get to go to the middle body in the convention's on, but right at the beginning and right at the end.
Just to prevent you from getting too much in the minutiae, Graeme, because no one's going to understand it, there's a big, really important meeting tomorrow that really decides the future of the LNP. And for some reason that we don't need to go into, you have the opportunity to go there and speak. Is that right?
Well, yes, about why we were kicked out and why we shouldn't be. But after that, the real fight is on, and our particular what we were trying to achieve was we wanted constitutional change, but we wanted everyone involved in it, right? And the party sort of is, yes, we're very much in. We need all the motions and all the input in by I think it was the 5th of March, right, which was difficult to do. And one would have expected probably around about the 5th of April, because it doesn't take that long. All the stuff could have been put together and should have gone out to all the party units. There's 92 of them at state level. Sorry,
Graeme, just again, because I think our viewing public isn't probably up to date with the minutiae of what happens in the LNP. So just to give people the background here, once every 5 years, the political party, the Liberal National Party, which is basically the Liberals in Queensland, only once every 5 years can they change their constitution. The current constitution is delegate-based, where not everyone gets an equal vote. And Graeme and some other people are putting together an agenda to change that, to basically democratize, to bring more internal democracy to the LNP. And they only have one chance every 5 years to do it. And to do that, it all comes down to this coming weekend. To get the nominations in time, to get the ideas in time, they had to be submitted 4 months ago. Now, if they were in 4 months ago, which they were, you would have thought the members of the LNP would have maybe nearly 4 months to consider them. What's happened instead is they were only distributed a week ago. So we've had 3.5 months of people not knowing what the reform ideas are. Now everyone suddenly has these ideas in front of them, and they are going to decide that this weekend. But Graeme, can I ask you just the nub of the most important changes? Like, what is the main difference between how you think it should be run internally and how it is status quo? How do you want to democratize the system?
Okay, there's just before I say that, there's 322 motions, and the time allocated gives 1 minute and 46 seconds to each one. Okay, so the whole thing has been, as George Brandis says, it's been designed to just end up with confusion. The three big issues. The first one is the party is all Liberal parties are. They're unincorporated associations. They're voluntary associations. They're like you run a social club, right? And there's no law. You can actually you can take it to a court, and if you can find a judge, he'll say, well, okay, yeah, that decision shouldn't have been made this way. But okay, then they can reverse it. But there's no penalty on the people that made the wrong decision, so they can just do it again. So one of the things we've got to do is we have to incorporate. right, to make it a company limited by guarantee, which is a standard. There's probably 100,000 of these organisations in Australia, and to protect the members. That's the first thing. So that forces the party executive to act legally and act properly. You can't just, in our case, they made up a whole series of really ridiculous restrictions that you're not allowed to say anything about anything without the written permission of the state director. I mean, what rubbish. I mean, and you've got there's a series of motions coming up. I'm getting to the point, don't worry. There's a series of motions coming up that have been put in by the state executive that you're not allowed to distribute the minutes of meetings. I mean, how are the members going to find out? They don't. All this sort of silly restriction. So
again, I guess the nub of this issue is if it's an unincorporated association, then courts cannot force the organisation to follow their own rules. But if they incorporate, you can then go to a court, and the court can force the organisation to follow its own rules, bringing the rule of law internally.
Absolutely, and the corporations law applies, and the directors, which would be the executive, doing stuff like that, they're in breach of it. There's serious penalties, right? And so the idea is to stop them from doing it.
So that's the first one. So what's the first one to incorporate?
The second one. There's two others that are really important. One is the getting rid of delegates for the state convention. President, there's sort of two. There's a state convention. There's a thing called state council, which is sort of like a middle body of about 300 delegates. So that's the. We'll just put that one to one side. The most important one is the convention. Currently, only delegates can speak and vote. Right, so the members can't go, or they can go, but they're not allowed to vote or talk. Now, the most important change is to allow the members to go, but that creates a tyranny of distance for someone in Cairns, because it costs $2,000 to go. So we need to go one step further, make online attendance allowed and online voting allowed. So therefore, everybody, bar probably a few people in really remote areas, and they should be allowed to have a sort of an extended proxy arrangement to get people there. So everyone has a voice. But of course, if you do that, you can't game it. So the people who are currently in charge are vehemently opposed. So
that's the one person, one vote, the internal democratization of the system.
Yeah, motion number 190 and 191 and 192. So there's sort of like three, and all basically say the same thing. Now, the other motion is, and this is a very important one, it's a really technical one, so I'll be really quick about this, is that the constitutional changes can only be made every 5 years unless the state council, the body in the middle, about 300 people or delegates, unless it says that it wants to change. So it has the power. So there's another motion there at 175, which changes the nature of the delegate selection of this middle body. So there still be delegates, but they don't vote for any positions, but they will make decisions, and there are no way one vote, one value. Right, so that's the other great change. So there's only two things. Those two things happen, or three, then over the next 12 months, the party can fix it.
So this internal democratization push, I'm going to say, it's very reminiscent of another set of ideas that we have briefly touched on here before. There was a book written a while ago called "Make the Liberal Party Great Again" by the great John Ruddock, 2 times guest on this show, which talks explicitly about the future of a major party on the right requires it to be internally democratic. And it sounds like, especially your second point there, Graeme, goes to the heart of that. Can I just say another part of what John Ruddock spoke about, which I believe you had on your agenda, at least at some point, was the idea that the members of a party would also have a say in who is the leader of that party. Is that still on the agenda? Absolutely.
Look, the Ruddock's book was fabulous, and he saved me at least 2 years. He did all that research, and I'm standing on the shoulders of a giant in this area. And he was thanked for his work. They got rid of him out of the party. The Canadians have been very successful at this. The Canadians have between 700,000 and 800,000 members, right? But they've got 40 million, but that's about 2% of the population. And their members, they vote for all positions. They vote for the parliamentary leader. They vote for obviously in the pre-selections, they vote for the other parliamentarians. More importantly, they vote for the president and the executive. So your members then basically appoint all of the officers and representatives of the party. And that's very, very important. So then the basis, the power base of a politician or of the leader is not his colleagues who all want to screw him for jobs in return for, yeah, I'll support you if you make me the treasurer, or I'll support you if you make me the sports minister. That all goes because the parliamentary leader, his authority comes from the members at large. Right, in Queensland, it's only probably in 5,000 or so, but it'll very quickly go to 50,000. And what's really important about this is the state president. He's being elected by exactly the same people. So they both have the same constituency. So they have to get on. They have to get on. That's why the Canadian system's been so successful. Although the Conservatives, they still won 40 seats or something last time, but they still missed by just a handful. So it's been very successful. We do the same. We will recover it. If we don't, if we keep the delegate system, it'll just hollow out and disappear. Have I covered all that stuff?
Yeah, well, that goes to a lot to the internal democratization. I should have said at the beginning, by the way, apologies, Gene. Normally we go straight to Gene's roundup. I asked Graeme how he was doing, and we've dived straight into 20 minutes into.
Oh, it's all right. I think it's a good discussion. I've got questions too, so let's keep rolling.
Well, okay, Gene, over to you.
Yeah, well, Graeme, I'm wondering what would be the implications of this change for the state LNP? Do you see that this would have any implications for who would be in ministries, implications for policy positions?
Well, the President, you have to be realistic about Pauline Hanson. She's at 30% or more. It's wavering a little bit at present, but I think that's just a recognition that her party is probably just run by two people. And the LNP are down under 20, what are they, 18% or something. So the Christofouli government, it's not going to survive. You know, David Christofouli is going to be, I mean, it's 2 years to go. You know, Pauline may implode, but that's not a very wise strategic play. You know, we'll be right, she'll implode. Well, what happens if she doesn't? But when you're going to take those straight numbers, and most of the seats north of, well, where I am here in Maroochydore, I heard one of the local members here, Andrew Wallace, did some private polling, and it showed that he's not going to be here next time. And Ted O'Brien, I mean, I can see Ted O'Brien's constituent houses just up on the hill from me, so we're very close. It has the same core constituency, so any polling done I'm in Fisher, any polling done in Fairfax, right next door, would be virtually identical. So the One Nation surge is north of here. Right? I'm in Mooloolaba, so it's north of there. So nearly all of those areas have just gone, we're over them. They walked away. You know, the Bondi massacre and the ridiculous, you know, joint legislation with the with the Liberal and Nationals and Labor. I think that was the trigger when people said, no, this is, you're off with the Pixies. So back to Christofouli, that's going to affect him. And his problem is, I mean, he's doing a relatively good job, I think, but he's taken, you know, was it Mark Textor's view, as long as you place yourself sort of 10 centimetres to the right of the Labor Party, your Conservative members don't have anywhere to go. But Pauline's 100 metres across to the right, where all the people are. Right, that's what's happened. So Christopher Foolley at this stage is really implementing Labor Party policy, and with a Labor health system and a Labor education system with no change, minimal change. It's all on the edges. We're managing Labor policy better than the Labor Party, which isn't really true. But Pauline's way across where the people are. Just on the health issue, I know Pauline. And 18 months ago, we were talking about this, and I said that we've worked out, because I've been involved. Well, you spoke at one of our couple of seminars, I think, John. We've worked out that the only way you can really fix the health system in Queensland, you have to decentralise the hospitals, make them locally autonomous. And she said, "Hey, we're doing that. Where did you get that from?" So I can't claim that she got it from me, but it's just common sense. The only way you can make the bloody thing work is you have to get rid of the bureaucrats who are, for every 10 nurses, in Queensland there's 4.6 bureaucrats, right? Say 5. So every 2 nurses there's a bureaucrat. The proper ratio is 1 to 10 nurses to 1 bureaucrat. So the ratio of bureaucrats is 5 times more than are needed. The only way you're going to get rid of them is you set up locally autonomous hospitals with locally elected boards, elected by the people that use the hospital, not appointed by the minister. Minister can appoint the first ones, but not after that. Local board and your private sector rules. You can pay the nurses 25% more, and you just don't need the bureaucrats. The role of the health department, which should disappear totally, is basically just to send money. The Treasury can do that, and they do it far more efficiently. Mm. So now she's going to run that, and she's got other crazy ideas like letting parents choose the schools and what the children get taught. And parents hate that sort of stuff. Yeah, not. That's going to be a real problem for Christopher Foolley, because he's trying to implement a Labor Party policy and he's just ignoring where Pauline is, and she's not really that organised yet, but she's got 2 years. So
right, yeah. Can I ask?
I have some bad news for you, Graeme. In terms of the state government, we just did a roundup of all of the state budgets last week. Not sure if you saw that one. Unfortunately, the Queensland budget did not come in great. We judged them based on how much they had spending restraint, and were able to keep spending under control from year to year. And the Tasmanian government actually won. Erica Betts won the award, the Gong ATA Best Treasurer of the Year. Unfortunately, Queensland came in 7 out of 9. So Queensland might have to do a bit more work on spending restraint if they want us to believe it's a centre-right government.
Well, I had Judy Sloan's a friend of mine, and I said, "Tell me how was it, because I don't read it." And she said, "Well, it's very hard not to laugh, Graeme." So she's very philosophic about it, but it was just rubbish.
Yeah,
it's really just no one reads it, no one follows it. Money just grows on trees, and the state government, the federal government bails them out. There's no serious attempt to rein in the spending because they don't raise the money. There's another topic for you to talk about one day.
It is a concern. I thought I'd lean into competitive federalism and try to get the states to compete with each other for the all-important prize of ATA's Treasurer of the Year. So we know if they're not going to be motivated by the good of the people they are ruling over or representing, as they should be, maybe they will be motivated by this award that we provided. So we'll see how well that incentive goes.
Yeah. Graeme,
so, going back to your insurgency inside the LNP to try and democratize the system and bring some more accountability, as you would describe it. What's the chance? What is the chance of success this weekend as you see it? What is the likely outcome? Once we're on Monday, what are we likely going to be saying by the time Monday comes around?
Well, it really depends. It's going to depend a lot on Matt Canavan, actually. If he comes down strong and says we've got to bring the member stuff in, we'll get over the line. It's really up to him. But if he doesn't do it, I mean, if that happens, there will be a rerun of the Senate pre-selection. All right? Those 2 motions I talked about, the 2 issues I talked about before, that will happen. He will win 9 out of 10. if there's just a straight race between, because there's only going to be one spot. So, Canavan 1, McGrath 2. That'll be 90% will be Canavan and 10% McGrath. But if you've got a controlled delegate group, the other way around, right? McGrath 2/3. Canavan, the non-McGrath people only have 1/3. So that's the crucial.
So do you think Matt Canavan has the personal popularity to be able to sway state convention at the moment? So I understand he's quite popular amongst the branch and file members, but they don't all get a vote yet. So you think Matt Canavan has that much sway amongst the people who get to vote this weekend?
Well, I mean, the reality is a lot of them still think that somehow he'll be able to go and win, win the pre-selection for Capricornia and win that. But that's where Pauline is, and that's where Ashby is. And they're opening an office in there, and up that area, the Liberal Party and the LNP, the name is mud at the present time, and 2 years could change it. But gee whiz, I mean, this is a crazy thing to do.
I think there is a decent chance that Matt Canavan could be the One Nation candidate for Capricornia.
Well, if we don't get up the changes this weekend, he will have been rejected twice by the LNP delegates, and he doesn't have a job. Why would he work for 2 years, flog his guts out for 2 years, to find at the end of it he doesn't have a job? This is crazy to think he would do that. I mean, he's a great guy. He wouldn't just change. But the reality is, Canavan's unusual amongst politicians because Canavan's more likely to go into business. He's a very successful guy and very intelligent. He'd make a squillion in business. He's not locked into a parliamentary career because that's all he can do. Canavan's much better than that. He's Foreman material, as we used to say. Because he doesn't need to, it's not his only life. He could do other stuff. So if we don't get up, Canavan's gone. Well, we can't blame him for going, let's put it that way. Why would he? And yet James McGrath, Senator McGrath, the Rainbow Sprinkle, I mean, he just waltzes in with another 6 years on the public purse. So there's a lot at stake.
Graeme, can I ask, to what extent is this LNP civil war over the issue of abortion? Is that driving some of the? It's nothing to do with it.
It's an irritant in the back. I mean, I don't understand why they can't have a debate on it, because there's only probably only about 2% of people who are really radically in favour of no abortion at all. Around the world, in Western societies, you've got abortion in the first trimester, extremely difficult in the second trimester, and almost impossible. There's extraordinary circumstances in the third trimester. That's sort of right around the world. There's variations, but that sort of range. There's no way. At present, there's abortion up to the day of birth in Queensland. This was done, not that anyone particularly advocates. So this was just done to wedge the Liberal people who are, there's a lot of very wet people, John, as you know, and must care about women. And so why wouldn't you have a debate? So, but it's not a major, it's what's irritating it, I think, to people is that there's no reason why they can't have a debate about it. Because the people who are in favour of there should be no abortion at all, they're only a very small minority. The vast majority of people in that across, as they are around the world. So I think Christopher Billy's made a mistake in not allowing any debate about it. Because the debate would certainly would improve what it is, because having abortion to the last days, that's infanticide, I'm sorry. That's just ridiculous. So, but not that it happens. Yeah, so and actually the question is a long way of saying, no, it's not a big issue. This is really about the delegate stuff, right? About members having a say. And how come Matt Canavan can't win a pre-selection for the top spot?
But will it mean, in practical terms, with these changes, policy would move more towards a conservative position on a range of issues?
By definition, of course, because
Okay.
the members select the parliamentarians. You can't game the system very well. And there's going to be a lot of members. This is the main thing. And they will be Conservative. So the party will reflect the membership. Now, as it did in Menzies' day. But as the delegate system got gamed, it moved to the left.
Yep. Okay.
Well, can I play devil's advocate then with these reforms, which is something that it's building on what Jean's saying. So more internal democracy will mean the party is forced to more accurately reflect the views of its members. Yes. But the views of a right-wing party's members are likely to be right-wing or conservative. Now, that means when the party then goes up to the general election and has to take on Labor, which is normally seen as a battle for the middle ground, if the internal incentives for the party is to pitch right, how would a party come general election time be able to tack to the center to win the election without then just getting voted out internally and booted out of their own party? So I think I'm correctly identifying what the state executive and those type of people would be worried about with your reforms. Yeah. I'll give it to you. How do you respond to that critique?
Oh, God forbid that they should have policies that the people want. Isn't that the appeal of Pauline Hanson? And the other thing is that there's what I call cultural conservatism and economic conservatism. Now, Pauline is essentially a cultural conservative. No one would really call her an economic conservative. But the politics is about winning constituencies of 50% plus one. So the Labor Party have got all the public servants and all the people who are beneficiaries of the welfare of the public servants' work. It's actually not. It's really not over 50%. We found that in The Voice, right? So the cultural issues are very strong in Australia, and so the parties, all you have to do is just basically focus on the cultural issues, the cultural conservative issues, and just be common sense. People, ordinary working people don't want. They have to balance their budgets, right? They understand that. They want the government to pick up the big items like education and health, but the rest of the time they just want to run smoothly. Why should the government run anything? I mean, they were open to that argument, but give me the name of one politician in Australia that said, look, we don't really need to have a whole tribe of public servants issuing licenses and doing that sort of stuff. Why don't we just tender it out? It'd be half the cost. And to be able to do half the time, most would do online. All that sort of stuff.
I agree with you on the policy, but I think you're right that the party would better represent what the members want. I guess what you're saying is you think a party that's tacked consistently to the right would be able to win that general election and bring in those swing voters?
Yes, as long as they understand the difference between economic right and cultural right. You've got to have the working people are very strong culturally. They love the country. They really, they love welcome to country. Yeah, boy, and they want one flag. I mean, we go down to the beach on Anzac Day at Mooloolaba, and I see them. There's the working people. Right? They're down there. They're, remembering our brave, our brave soldiers that passed away. And on Australia Day, it's the family people with the flags up and the barbecuing lamb. The checkout. She's one of us, but the HR person, she's Labor, right? That's the difference.
My impression of this is I think the head office people that have the tactics that we need to tack to the centre to get those swing voters, I suspect their approach to politics was roughly correct for much of the last 50 years. I think somewhere about 5 to 10 years ago, that started to switch. Yes. And that the best way to start picking up the swing voters. So you see that the misunderstanding is that swing voters are always centrists. Sometimes they are, but they're not defined by being centrist. They're defined by being people who can change their loyalties. And I think the swing voters are now searching for conviction and something to stand behind. And what's what I'm looking for? Not looking fake. Integrity. That sort of stuff.
Authenticity.
Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. And so there is a new definition of a swing voter, which I think the people in HQ haven't adjusted to. I think sometimes people on our side of politics underestimated the truth of the HQ argument in times gone by. Attacking to the center has worked in some previous elections. I don't think it does anymore. And I don't think the HQ people have changed with the times.
Swing voters, I disagree. Swing voters, we get the impression that they swing from one side to another. They're really issues voters. Right? They're attracted to issues more than rights and lefts. So they tend to be sort of economically, if you like, economically progressive and culturally conservative. That's probably a better way. Of course, it's a silly thing to say because everyone's different. So we're talking about if you like little averages over, small averages over a big pool. But if you look at
understand that distinction. I'm going to say I even think that's the wrong way of thinking about it. I think people who are trying to understand swing voters through any political lens are missing the point. I think these swing voters wouldn't be able to describe their own politics. They wouldn't be interested in trying to describe their own politics. They aren't just a compromise and a middle ground of what everyone else is doing. They are people who are waiting to be inspired by a conviction about something in particular.
About issues. They're issues people. So if the culturally right issues are emphasised and there's no economic, handouts, going on. I mean, Stafford in Queensland was a good example. Christopher nearly won that thing because he actually got dragged into cultural issues of, we've got all this oil, we should be drilling it ourselves and refining it ourselves. Right? That's a cultural issue. And the Labor Party weren't running, so there were no offers in like 50-cent bus fares and train fares, far too much. We're going to make them 25 cents. There was none of that. So the major issues in Stafford were really cultural ones, and Christopher should have hammered a bit harder. He might have got there. Because the cultural right issues of the so-called swinging voters, because it's a largely working area, they were being attracted. They were being what's the term, wooed by Christopher, and he nearly did it. And Labor weren't there saying, "Don't worry about that. We're going to put more money in your back pocket." So that's swinging voters. I don't think there's anybody in HQs anywhere that understands this.
So let me, maybe the last question, or Jean, if you have another one afterwards, feel free to jump in. But I've got one last one for you here. It maybe is a similar answer to what we were just talking about there. But the founder of the ATA, the Australian Taxpayers Alliance, taxpayers.org.au, the founder of the ATA, Tim Andrews, liked this idea of an ideological Turing test. Where it is, you need to try and outline your opponent's argument so convincingly a person could genuinely believe you are your opponent. So, Graeme, I'd like to put you on the spot with an ideological Turing test, and I'd like you to outline as best you can an intelligent and sincere person's argument against your position. What would be the best version of the anti-Graeme argument?
Oh, in terms of what? In terms of the constitutional
or the reforms this weekend? Yes, the LNP reform.
The arguments I would be arguing that the delegate system is the best way to represent distant people because they can't afford to travel. So we need to appoint people who can talk, for them because they can afford to go. So that's a major argument. There's not a lot of other arguments because they sort of all they're the basic strategy, if you like, of the forces of the status quo is just to try and squash all debate about it and have no discussion at all. So the Turing test, I can think that's one argument that comes up. And I suppose the other one would be, are we sure members really have the intelligence to do this? It's not a good one to say to members, we think you're too dumb to be able to decide this.
Well, I guess it's the Burkean argument, isn't it? That the members, they've got lives to worry about. And so you have some delegates who can be well informed on all of the issues and then go and debate them. And that would be the Burkean argument for it.
Yeah, superior political knowledge on how people think and work. And
it occurs to me that another version of a defensive argument in defense of the other side would be along the Chesterton's fence idea that in Queensland the LNP are in power. Don't fix something that's not broken, and if we're currently winning, not broken, and then you guys would know the story of Chesterton's fence. You know, the non-conservative walks up to a fence. He doesn't know why it's there, so he rips it down. Conservative walks up to a fence, sees a fence, and thinks there must be a reason this is here. I won't tear it down until I know that reason. And so this is Chesterton's argument for why you don't walk up to things that you don't fully understand and just change them because you have this ideological vision for what is right. If it's working, you just let the fence keep on working. And then I'm not saying it's necessarily working what's happening in the LNP, but they could make the case that the LNP is in government in Queensland. So if you need to reform the Liberal Party, maybe reform the rest of the Liberal Party first, and let Queensland keep on winning.
Oh, well, that is true. That comes up all the time. We don't want to upset the Christopher Lee government because we need them to win a second time. But that's okay until Pauline's herd of elephants arrived. It's not just an elephant in the room; it's a fucking herd of elephants in the room. And so none of these arguments. Yeah, I understand the argument, but you can't ignore this. And they're pink too, pink elephants. Yes. Is that red hair on that elephant? You know, crikey.
Yes, indeed. It's a red-haired elephant. No, I think that is the issue with the rise of One Nation. It's hard to say that the Liberal model is effectively working across the country at the moment. I'm just trying to, there's no one here to defend the other side. So I'm trying to get us all to come up with our best version of, as Nick Mann says here, steel manning their argument. Look, I am already, long before you did this, Graeme, I am an advocate that I think major parties need to have internal democracy. I think that is the only way to actually try to lock them in to continue trying to do something that is in the interest of their members. So I was convinced of that long before here. So it's not that you've convinced me, Graeme, but I'm very happy to see that you are trying to push forward this project of internal democratization for a major party. Graeme, sorry, Gene, you were going to say?
I was just going to say, John, I'm really warmed, I'm heartwarmed, I suppose, by your support for democracy, because often you're arguing something different. So
I know, I'm just against democracy for countries, Gene. I can have democracy inside an organisation.
Yes, okay.
Well, ultimately comes back, you've got to do what I call the Clive Palmer test. Ultimately, political parties have to make decisions about where they go and who knows what has to be presented. Right? Now, Clive Palmer's view is that he's got all the ideas and he doesn't need any members. And he's really, I rest my case. I mean, it's just a hodgepodge of nonsense. The only group that you can really trust is the wisdom of the crowd. There's been heaps of research done on this. The people who individually seem to know nothing, but as a crowd, when they're asked to sort of come to conclusions about it, they nearly always get it right. There's a lot of research on this. So you just have to trust and that's the ultimate thing. So if you've got a large party and it's democratic, you're going to be tapping into the wisdom of the crowd. They're not going to get it right all the time, but they will get it right 90% of the time. Whereas if you've got an individual, Pauline's a classic example of someone who's got the policy stuff right at this stage, but for 30 years she didn't, and she may not in future. But the crowd will always, 90% of the time, will get it right. And that's why that's a sort of a confirming argument, John.
Well, I've got to put a counter argument. I still think the best thing for major parties is to have internal democracy. So I'm not arguing against that, but I've got to quibble about the way you've got there. Maybe that's an unwise thing for me to do, but a strong recommendation for anyone listening to this, a book by Brian Kaplan called The Myth of the Rational Voter. It is a must read for anyone who thinks they understand how politics works. It takes you through a primer of public choice theory, which again, public choice theory is a must understand area of economics for anyone who wants to understand how the world actually works. And he goes through the idea that the law of large numbers that you're talking about there, the wisdom of crowds, is true as long as there's no underlying preference over beliefs. And as long as you have some, or it can be true if you have some payoff or consequence from the outcome. But in politics, you get a situation where people have a preference over beliefs and no consequence from being wrong. And he finds systematic errors and biases in the wisdom of crowds when it comes to big political decisions. So anyway, I can't do his book justice here. It's a thick tome that goes through his arguments, the counter arguments, and the counter arguments. Anyone who wants to understand this stuff, strong recommend one of the greatest living economists in this world, Brian Kaplan. Not always right, but always interesting.
We should get him on the show. That'd be great.
Okay.
Okay. Well, am I done?
No.
Well,
no.
I mean, I think I don't have any more questions for you now. We are going to go on to Gene's segment. Gene, Graeme, are you saying you have to run off, or do you want to stick around and talk economics?
No, I better go.
Okay. Could we just ask about the Allegra Spender Zali Stegall party?
Oh, yes.
Sure.
Do you have any thoughts on that, Graeme? You know, the new what is it? The community, or whatever they're calling themselves.
It's CSA. I think it stands for Champagne Socialists of Australia.
Look, we have a lot of rules which have been made by the major parties about parliamentary resources, and I think that's the only advantage that they get, isn't it? They've got so many members, they get so much extra staff. I think it's just largely to do with that. I can't see any. They ran as the Teals. I mean, even the concept of a political party, you know, everyone thinks it's the be all and end all. Who cares? What if it's just a loose accommodation of liberals, of independents who all call themselves the same thing, and have a set of policies that they all agree to? Well, what's the difference? We probably should get rid of all the rules about political parties, really. And the only rule we want is there should be total disclosure of your financing. What else?
Before you go, Graeme, I've also realised a bunch of these questions are really to you rather than to us. So can I put a few of these to you?
All right.
Taylor said, at this point, why not cut losses and just go and establish a new party, like constitutionalise these changes in a new party? I think you said the numbers are less than 5,000, not 25,000, but it's as a general idea. What's your thoughts on just cutting and starting again?
What, with the Liberals?
Yeah.
Well, my view is that before you go and do that, you have to establish clearly that internal change is impossible. Now, you asked me before what are the chances of getting it up on this weekend. I think it's about 50-50. If we get up, we win. The Liberal Party reforms. The others, we'd be able to fix the other states easily if you got one. If it doesn't get up, and Queensland's the most democratic of the lot. The rest of them are just bastard. Everything you're seeing in Victorian Liberal Party is far worse than what it really looks like. It's, what happened with Moira Deeming is just you couldn't write a book about it. It's just dreadful. So yes, but the first step is you've got to say we tried to fix it, and they said that's basically it. Then you can go and say, well, I think we might just do this properly, and you're just setting up a constitutional structure that isn't one that's changed from where you are. Just start up from scratch, keep it simple. That would be the base, and then you can then start to attract some people. It's a tricky one. I mean, the politicians are going to be all over the shop because they're all going to lose their jobs, and they get desperate. If you've got it's going to be really messy for a while, but I think we'll come out of it okay.
Yeah.
A lot of people
pseudo question or more comment that it's worthy for you to see here. In talking about internal democracy, one person, one vote with online attendance to meetings and online voting was all introduced by the Libertarian Party a couple of years ago. So I guess once more, if they were here speaking on their behalf, they would say, we once again welcome the Liberal Party stealing our best ideas. Please continue stealing their best ideas.
Yeah, well, there's more to a party than just having a democratic basis. You've got a bit more than that. But it's...
I think it'd be fair to say the Libertarian Party has the most in-depth policies and has for 25 years. So it's not only an internal party structure. So
that's right. It's got to be... and people are... We're sort of like two-party people. as most of the, like America is, although, God, they made a fatal mistake in America. They had this, to vote, you had to register as a Republican or Democrat. That forced both parties to be close.
Or independent. You can register as an independent.
That's what's destroyed it. People said, I don't want either, be an independent. And what's happened is that the Democrats have just wandered off to the left. They're a mile away from the Republican Party, and it's creating some problems. It'll get sorted, I guess, eventually. So we really want a two-party system. It's worked very well in Australia, for a long time, until both parties became sadly corrupted by their, by the flaws in their system. And politicians will always be politicians. They want a lot of fun, playing delegate games, because it's exciting, because you don't know the result. Because nothing to do with good governance. That's the problem. Yeah.
I think there is a huge question that we don't have enough time to dig to now. I don't think that people used to be good and now we've turned bad. I think humans always follow their incentives. Politicians follow their incentives. Yeah. They used to 100 years ago, they used to 50 years ago, and they do today. So I think there's something that has changed the nature of the incentives of politicians. And perhaps it's the same thing that we've been unpacking that seems to have changed the way humans behave. Perhaps it was the emergence of social media or the internet or something that has got information flowing in a different way that has changed their incentives. But I agree politicians act worse now, but I don't believe their moral character has fundamentally changed, because I believe humans have fundamentally consistent moral characters over generations. So something has changed about the incentives that work on these imperfect humans. And I don't know what it is yet, but there's a thesis in that somewhere. There'll be a good book in that somewhere.
Yes, the incentives have changed. The one thing that's, in 45 years, there were always duds right over the entire time, but there was a sort of core of really good people. That core is hollowed out, really hollowed out, and I don't know what's really caused that. That's the change. They aren't as there aren't as many good people as there used to be.
Well, I think there's a lot more people that exist based on opinion polls and 50% plus one. So they see themselves as their job is just to represent back to the public whatever the latest opinion poll tells them. Whereas I think a good statesman in politics has to be someone with conviction and understanding who has tried to work out the solution to a problem. And then if that solution is unpopular, you sell it to people so that you can move the country in a better direction. And we don't have many statesmen left. We used to have more. Not that they were ever perfect, but we used to have more, and it's a dying breed. I think to his credit, I think Matt Canavan falls into that category as someone who tries to solve a problem first and then bring people with him on a journey. But I think a lot of our recent prime ministers have not had that conviction from both sides of the political dice, so to speak.
Probably the rot goes back, and John Howard's even talked about this, when the Labor Party said, let's really stuff up the LNP. Let's give them entitlement for staffers. And these political staffers came into the business, and they are philosophically, and they have really like sort of little movable Sir Humphreys. They don't have any opinions on anything other than winning. So they are really driven by the polls. And they don't have any, most of them, they're the same people left and right. The staffers are staffers. They don't have any opinions. They can work for the Liberal Party, they can work for the Labor Party. They tend not to, but they can. They're the people who ultimately drive the politicians and say, polls say this minister or, sir, whatever.
Well, I 100% disagree. I'm going to put this case to you. I think what leads politicians is their department, the minister's departments. Because a politician comes in and they've probably got very good at shaking babies and kissing hands, getting elected and playing internal machination games. They're not necessarily an expert on the minutiae of every part of the Department of Transport or Department of Agriculture. So then they rock up as one person, maybe with a few staffers who are normal university students, and they put their battle of wits against the department of thousands of people who have been there for tens of years, wearing fancy suits with a briefcase full of reports that have been written over years, and they know them in detail. They run rings around these ministers, unless you have a very good minister. That's why you need good ministers. But a lot of ministers, if they haven't shown up with a very fine-tuned agenda, their bureaucratic staff will run rings around them. And the only possible way of countering that balance would be to give them some ideologically motivated staffers to push back against the overwhelmingly left-wing bureaucracy. In my experience, there's a lot of ratbag staffers. There's also a lot of staffers who got involved because they're true believers. This is maybe minor party politics. Minor party staffers are true believers in a cause, and they're often trying to toughen up their MPs. Yes, they're reminding their MPs, we're here for a reason, don't sell out. So, I think you didn't have the staffers.
Yeah.
If you didn't have the staffers, you'd be more reliant on the bureaucracy, and I think the bureaucracy is worse than the staffers.
Oh yeah, but the problem, the standard of the staffers, with you accepted, of course, John, when you did it, is not very good. It's not very good, and
no, the
they all want to be politicians, and yeah, so the politicians are very poorly served, and of course the party apparatus that used to be around, the National Party. And more so than the Liberal Party. I mean, I remember at the National Party, we had connections through the city of Brisbane that the present party, LNP, has got no connections in the city. They wouldn't know, a business person in the Brisbane city, from a bar of soap. But in the old days,
I think that comes down to staffers are paid an amount that basically is not going to be a career to be a staffer unless you're very ideologically motivated, which is what you get in minor parties, or it's a stepping stone to a political career, which is what you get in major parties. Meanwhile, the bureaucrats are paid 200,000, 300,000, 900,000, so they can actually sit in there comfortably and carve out a career. I think that is a dangerous thing in our political system, to have the bureaucrats with that much power.
Well,
I don't know the easy solution. Well, RW gave us a solution. We need a Doge to cut some of the bureaucracy.
The first part is to recognise it as a problem. Most politicians think, I need the public service so that they can do my work for me. And they actually believe that. And what you said about public service is exactly right. And the politicians are really...
The truth is they will need some amount of public service, but unless they've got the wherewithal to be able to fight back on the ideas, they're not just relying on the public service to implement the politician's plan. It often turns out that the politician implements the public services plan, and that's where you need a strong minister.
Well, of course, what happens is they call in the public service and say, look, I think we've got too many of you people. Can you give us a report on how we can reduce them? Oh, yes, Minister, of course. We've got one here for you now. I mean, and they fall for it every time. Look, it's not easy, and there has to be big change. I mean, I got to say, Pauline announcing at the federal level, she's going to get rid of the Federal Health Department, the Federal Education Department, because they don't do any teaching. They just funnel money with strings on it. And, the Aboriginal Affairs Department, whatever they're called. And what was the other one? Oh, it's the Net Zero Department. There's four. When in history of this country has any person got up and said, I'm getting rid of these departments? He's the first person who's ever said it.
Well, no, the Libertarian Party's said it for 26 years. No one listens to them because no one don't get a microphone. But yes, it's great to see someone who's polling at high 20s or 30% saying that. It'll be really interesting to see when One Nation starts looking at the potential of government, whether they will continue to say these ideologically good, of questionable popularity statements. I hope they do. It's going to be really interesting to watch that play out over the coming months.
The only way they can really get into, or they might be able to fall over the line if there's a catastrophe, and Pauline can be the Prime Minister from the Senate, because there's no bar on it. There's no Prime Minister mentioned and she could probably get away with it. But unless they have a sound, Democratic Party structure, you just can't sustain it, because she's going to have 150 politicians. That's just going to be a nightmare. But if you've got 100,000 members just to start, and those politicians have got to deal with, and they're going to be pre-selected not by Pauline but by those members, you start to get a big change, right? But without that member base and a Democratic member base, it won't happen.
Well, I think if the polling stays as it is,
Hmm?
I think there's a good chance Pauline runs for. I think Blair would be the right place for her to run.
Yeah.
Because it would have her running against a Labor member. I think the other places people have mentioned is Capricornia or Ford. But if she runs there, she's running against LNP. And I think it would just look better for her to knock off a Labor member. And Blair, she ran in Blair in 1998, by the way. She only narrowly lost that 98 election.
Why would you just stay in the Senate? Never been done before. But Gorton was elected leader when he was a senator, and they found him a job afterwards. Now Pauline can get into power and be the prime minister from the Senate. Because
I'm not saying she can't. I think though the convention is normally from the lower house. If she's making a real play for prime minister, she'd make a play for the lower house, and she'd make a play for knocking off a Labor seat in the lower house. I think. We'll wait and see. It's probably going to be determined by polling closer to the election, but that would be the confident move. That would be the I am running for prime minister move. Running in the Senate is saying, I think I'm not going to win and I want to be able to stay in here to be allowed opposition, which is a credible thing to do. And good on her if she does that. But
look, she's going to get, what's the percentage? 30%? How many voters vote in federal elections?
Well, I do things on percents because the raw numbers don't get you elected. The percents do.
What I'm leading to is there's $4 a vote, right? She's going to get 30% of all the votes in the next federal election by $4.
She's going to get that regardless of which house she runs in and regardless of whether she personally wins. So she controls the party. So
that's right. So, I mean, I don't have a problem with that. There's no reason why I would suggest her if she asked me, I would say, well, just make it public. Set up a structure so that the money goes into an entity which you control and then it's yours. I don't think anyone would really mind as long as she's open about it. But she could run. If she got Barnaby, who's very capable in the lower house, she can just stay in the upper house, and she can just take the PM to a new level. She'd be pregnant with possibilities, John and Jean. So,
well, as I've been saying for a while, I think the smartest play for One Nation would be to put up Barnaby as their prime minister in waiting. He's been a former deputy prime minister. I think has the likability and the stature, and I think he's quite bright. So, but anyway, it's not up to me. Can I ask you more generally? We're a long way out from the next federal election and from the next Queensland state election. What do you think is the trajectory of One Nation? I know it's crystal ball gazing. Nobody knows. You're just as likely to be wrong. But I'm curious, what is your current vibe or guess? Are they going to stay ascendant, or are they going to trip over their shoelaces, or what do you think?
Well, it's entirely dependent upon whether she wants to democratise it or not. She wants to keep it just as it is. It's very hard to see that she's going to grow much more because people trust her. But they're also people are sensible and going to go, how are you going to run this, Pauline? And it's you and Ashby basically running the show. And people are very wary of it, like Clive Palmer was never viable because I'll run the whole thing myself. I mean, Donald Trump could probably pull that off, and he almost did actually pull it off. But I don't think Pauline can. So I think there's going to. I'm a long way of saying I think it'll stay about this figure. If she makes some, sets up a reasonably democratic system, which she could do, because she doesn't need to control them. She's God. She says, "Look, I want you to do that." Okay, right, we're doing that.
She's lost nearly every elected MP that's ever been elected under the One Nation banner. So the God title is of questionable effectiveness up until now.
Yes. Now, and I think one of the reasons is that the politicians have sort of been there there was no members around to keep them in line. Members form a very important role in the political party. They keep the politicians grounded, especially when the politicians know that those people out there, those 2,000 people are going to be voting on my pre-selection next time around. I'll be instead of focusing on Paul, I might focus on those people there and make sure that I'm doing what they want so that they'll vote me in. So that's sort of how you've got to look at it. And, to set up the sort of structure that we've sort of got here. She just captures it, and you build in something for how you manage the money.
I've got to say, if One Nation does stay at its current level, the Liberal Party will still exist. The National Party may not. In 1 or 2 election cycles, if One Nation stays where they are now, I don't think there is. It could be within a year or two. In less than a year's time, there may not be a New South Wales division of the National Party. New South Wales election coming up, and the Victorian election coming up. It's going to be tricky for the Nats to keep existing unless One Nation has a downward turn in their fortunes.
Well, there's a couple of nationals. Well, in Queensland, everyone is actually a Liberal. It's only just a tradition that Matt Canavan says, "Well, I'm going to sit with the Nationals." He's still a Liberal, and Colin Boyce, for instance, he's where he is just ran in from Gladstone. That's all One Nation territory. Totally. Yeah. So he's probably one of the rare ones that might hold his own, because he's been attacked by the party. He was one of the guys that said, "I'm not voting for this bloody hate speech legislation." But the others, there's Lou O'Brien, I think, is around Harvey Bay area. They're all of the LNP federal members in Queensland are vulnerable. I mean, we talked about this before. Where I am, they're all going to go, because Queensland's largely rural. Right? And we don't actually, the LNP don't have many seats in Brisbane.
Well, more to the point, that the seats that One Nation don't look like they could take from the Liberals are all Liberal seats, not national seats, right? So if you go around all the seats that are most vulnerable, they are all the ones with the N after their name rather than the L after their name in federal parliament. So it's not.
I'm agreeing with you totally. Yeah. The National Party.
What we're seeing here is the great renaming of the National Party into the One Nation Party, and in the future there will be another Liberal One Nation coalition in Queensland, maybe with One Nation, the bigger party, just like Sir Joh Bjelke-Petersen had back in the 70s with the ascendant National Party. So maybe the past is the future.
Well, Matt Canavan's classic. He needs a point of difference with Pauline. He's the only politician in Australia, not in the Liberal or National Party, who can match it with Pauline in terms of effectiveness of communication. Right? Angus, he might be a nice guy, but it's just he's not a leader, and not a nice guy, but you have to have something special to be a political leader. Canavan needs the reforms on the weekend, and if he's got them, he can save the National Party. Right? But the people who control the LNP in Queensland have no interest in that. They only want to be. They're only interested in themselves, and the Christopher government people can't see that yes, the state's different, but really is it? Really is it? So, yeah, the National Party.
I agree that Matt Canavan is probably the best leader we could hope for in the country at the moment, and I agree the party should have internal democracy. Unfortunately, my sneaking suspicion is, and I hate to say this because I don't want it to be true, it may be too late for Matt. I want him to be the leader. I think he deserves to be at the forefront of politics. I don't know if the Nats have left it too late to put him in charge, and perhaps the voting public has stopped listening. But good luck to him. I hope he does well.
You're right. Yeah. No. He had a couple of cracks at running, trying to take it over.
I don't blame him. No.
No, he tried. He's a fighter. Doesn't he's prepared to lose, which is unlike most of the others. It could be too late. But we'll know this weekend if nothing gets through and Canavan's rejected. Well, that's the end of Matt's career with the LNP, because he's not going to. Why would he work his guts out for 2 years? For James McGrath, why? It's crazy. He's not going to do it. He's a good guy.
Trying to defend the National Party, I assume. But anyway, I was just thinking, if they're listening public at home, whether there's anything they can do to help. There isn't actually anything they can do to help your cause at the moment, because of course they would need to already be a delegate to be able to vote tomorrow. But I guess thoughts and prayers is what you can contribute, and keep the dream alive for the idea that if there's going to be a major party on the right of politics, it needs to be internally democratic. I think that's a big takeaway here. And whether it happens this weekend in the LNP, whether it happens this year with One Nation, I believe, and John Ruddock said this, that the centre right will get their shit back together once they work out that they need to have a mass internally democratic party on the right. And I think I hope that will be the future of politics. It's just how long it takes us to get there.
Tony Abbott understands it, so don't drive up. Abbott's currently the federal president, and I think he will be discovering that he can't do anything from within the party. The way the thing's structured, it's just it made sense in Menzies' day, but not today. And he's the one that wants to that believes exactly what you said, John. That we need to have a large Democratic Party. He believes the party needs 200,000 members. It needs to be run by the members and be democratic. So he's the only politician that really clearly understands the stuff and has been enunciating. So at the end of the day, if we're going to get it, he's probably the guy we've got to get. And the Canadian system allows and will the constitutional stuff that we'll set up if we get there, it will allow him. You don't need the person who's going to be the party leader doesn't need to be in the parliament when you appoint them. Well, we did that with Campbell Newman. So it's allowed. There's no problems with doing it. Once you get in, well, you find a seat, which is what happened with Gordon. Gordon, he was made leader, and then they found a seat. Yeah.
As Tony Abbott might say, inshallah, Graeme. Hopefully that happens. I don't think Tony Abbott would say that, but nonetheless. No, I think, look, if you take something away from this while listening, it might not be that you can fix what happens tomorrow, but please keep the flame alive for this internal democracy of the major party, right?
Your grandchildren, great-grandchildren, you have to do it. Otherwise, they've got no country.
And thank you, Graeme, for taking up that fight in this chapter of the fight. Good luck to you. Good luck to you tomorrow, seeing if you can get unexpelled from the party, and then to see if that party is democratic enough to make sense.
It makes no difference. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, guys. I hope
All right. Thanks a lot for coming on, Graeme.
Thanks, Graeme.
All right. Gee, well, that ended up going a bit of a different direction. That didn't follow our usual format, but thank you for your tolerance.
Oh no, it's all interesting. I think there's a big question there about can we actually get back to that mass political participation we had in the post-war period? I mean, it wasn't just the Liberal Party; it was the Labor Party too. The Labor Party is much less democratic than it once was, and it's much less representative of who its traditional supporters were. So I think it's an issue for both sides, and it's an issue in the UK too. Can we actually get back to those conditions? What was it about that post-war period that's different from now? It's a good question. It would be nice to see.
My innovation on this, because I think at this point, people aren't joiners. People used to be civic-minded. They used to be joiners because we had a community that built up from the ground, and you added a thin layer of politics over the top. My, of course, somewhat libertarian-inspired take on this is that the big government has crowded out community. The community centre is a hollow husk of what it used to be. People are no longer joiners. People find it weird if you're a joiner, right? If you actually get involved with community groups, you're kind of that quirky old weird guy, which, yes, I'm quirky, I'm old and I'm weird, but fine. But more people should be quirky old weird guys and be joiners. But realistically, people have been trained out of that. They've been trained, I can just sit back, vote once every 3 years, complain to a politician, and a bureaucrat will do it. That's our new model of civic engagement, which I find very depressing. So to reverse that, I think to get people willing to associate with political parties, which I think would be a good thing, you really have to give them something. They need to feel like they've got a tangible thing of value. And the only tangible thing of value you can give a member is a vote on who gets to be their candidate. So I would pitch for a major party on the right, whether it's the LNP or the Libertarian Party or One Nation or whatever the UAP, a future party of the right would be you can continue with your $100 membership if you like, but there needs to be another membership that is like free or $5 or $2, some token membership where people can join. And you don't get too much involvement from that, but you get to vote on who your local MP is. It's basically borrowing the American system of having a primary. In America, it'd be called a closed primary. You get to vote on the primary of who is your Republican candidate if you have registered that you're a Republican. So it's the same thing. I'd be encouraging a system for having people pay $100 and get actively involved, or just tick the box and pay $2 and be passively involved. You're registering as a Liberal, maybe not a full Liberal Party member, but you're like a registered Liberal or One Nationist or whatever it is. And that allows you to vote in that primary for your local candidate. And that is something of real value. So people would have an incentive to do it. It's something of low cost. So people wouldn't be dissuaded from doing it. And that way, hopefully they would get more engaged. And from there, you could upsell them to higher levels of involvement in the party. So that's for what it's worth, my suggestion for radically increasing democratization inside the major parties. And yes, I take your point. I should stop saying the Liberals, whatever the future party of the right is, whether it's One Nation, the Liberals, Liberal Nation, UAP, the UAP, Libertarian, Liberal, National, One Nation, Citizen, Rennick, People First, whatever it is called, I still hope they take on board these ideas of more radical internal democracy. And again, kudos to John Ruddock for really putting a lot of these ideas on the map of the.
Well, I think that they'll have to, because I think why One Nation or Pauline Hanson is successful is that, like, she's tapped into something. She's identified a frustration that people have, and it's resonating with people. And I think that they'll want to see that. And but she needs to maintain that trust with the people. Like, if she gets into government, she needs to I think this is what we were saying before. She needs to maintain that connection. People need to trust her, and I think having that internal democracy and listening to what people want, that's going to be part of it.
Yeah, I'm in two minds about that. I think they will need internal democracy in One Nation eventually. But as I said before, I do think the major party of the right needs to be internally democratic. I don't think that's true for minor parties of the right. And so the trick is how you navigate from one system to the next. But that's going too deep in the current question. I just wanted to respond to RW here. Look, maybe it shouldn't be a $2. Like, I don't think people consider $2 to be money anymore. They just throw $2 in it down the drain most of the time. But so make it free then. If it's free and you know someone who is actively engaged in a campaign and they say, hey, sign up, it's free, you could help me out. That's the way you could start getting people re-engaged. I agree there is a lack of engagement. That's why I'm trying to make it as cheap as possible. So there has to be something that dissuades just people who hate your party all signing up en masse, right? So there would have to be some sort of, I don't know, a month's vetting process, or maybe someone inside the party has to vouch for you or something like that. But other than that, make it cheap enough. And when people get inspired enough, hopefully they join. And as you point out in your next comment, a lot of people were inspired to join One Nation. If One Nation doesn't give them any value for their money, if they don't give them any payoff or any reason for being there, you'll find a lot of people don't renew those memberships. So I'm glad that they're joining. And now it's up to One Nation to make sure they are giving these people a payoff for their membership dues if they want to keep them in. So that's my thought on that. We're getting some good comments coming in, G, but I don't know, you went to the trouble of putting together Gene's roundup. I think we owe it to the listening public to run through it quickly. As we say every week, if you're a normal person, you don't follow all the economic news of the week because you're normal. Thankfully for you, we are not normal. So you can come here for 5 or 10 minutes a week and find out everything you needed to know about the economy. So, Gene, what do we need to know?
Yeah, sure, John. We'll go through it quickly because I want to go back to some of those comments. I think the big news this week has been relating to the housing market. We've got the continuation of monthly declines in national house prices driven by Sydney and Melbourne. Brisbane's growth is slowing down. I mean, the only city which seems to be going against the trend is Perth. So WA still growing at 0.7% in 1 month each month. So pretty remarkable performance still. Whereas other capitals are down, and this is related to, well, one, the higher interest rates, cost of living issues, and possibly, I mean, investors just pulling out of the market for established houses. So due to the property investment tax changes that the federal government's introduced. So we're starting to see that in the numbers, where there's reports about lending being down at the banks, particularly for investors. So that's one of the big issues at the moment. Talk about negative equity for first home buyers, people who may have been enticed into the market because of the 5% deposit scheme, borrowed a lot of money, and then now house prices are going down. So that's there's been a lot of talk about that this week, and I think we've just got a comment on 5% deposits we can pick up a bit later. There was a bit of noise about building approvals yesterday. Well, in today's, I think in the Australian and Courier Mail today, they ticked down slightly. They seem to be flattening out, but there hasn't really been a collapse. There's a lot of noise in those data. But essentially, what's going on is we're just not building enough houses. We're not approving enough houses or apartments. What we need to be hitting on that, if you look at that building approvals line, we've got a national target of 240,000 dwellings a year. We essentially need to hit that to, have a decent chance of producing the housing we need for the growing population. So that should be at 20,000 consistently, and we're per month, and we're just undershooting that. By 2,500. So we're significantly off each month and over the year. So we're not going to hit that 1.2 million. We may hit, I don't know if we will even hit 1 million over 5 years. It's very disappointing, and just goes to show too many restrictions on housing. There's too many costs. We just make life too difficult for anyone who wants to develop anything. And something I heard today, John, is we talked about the capital gains tax changes last week with Derek Francis. One thing that the developers are concerned about is the changes to the self-managed super funds. So there's been a change that prevents them from essentially gearing up, if I've got that correct, and that's going to be affecting the availability of capital for development projects, and that could start having a significant impact on the amount of new development. Right, and the other things I've been tracking, I mean, oil is trading around 70, 71, 72 USD a barrel, so it's pretty much where it was pre-Iran conflict. So things are getting back to normal. Let's hope that ceasefire continues. And we're starting to see, from May to June, we have seen a decline in the number of Australian businesses that are experiencing supply chain disruptions. It's still highest in agriculture. That's an issue that I think we chatted with. Was it with Pete Rothwell?
Yeah, Pete Rothwell, yeah.
Yeah, we chatted with Pete about that. They're still concerned about that, more so than any other sector. A third of businesses, third of farmers in ag, forestry, fishing are still concerned, but it's down from around, between 40 and 45% the month before in May. So looks like people are starting to get less anxious about that, which is good news. But of course, everything depends on the ceasefire being maintained. That's essentially all I had as a wrap up this week, John. The big issues are house prices and the ongoing conflict in the Middle East and the fallout from that, and how, at the moment things seem to be getting back to normal. Touch wood.
Yes, touch wood indeed. So it's probably too early for us to unpack anything new on the war front from what we've said previously. So I will take this opportunity to segue from your housing comments, especially your comments about it always being too expensive to build, which ties in wonderfully to this week's newsletter from the ATA. So as you may know, we send out a newsletter once a week. If you haven't received it, that means you're not signed up. Please do so. Go to austaxpayers.substack.com. That's austaxpayers.substack.com. Sign up. You can sign up for free. If you really like what we're doing, you can also sign up to a paid account, a financial membership for a couple of dollars a month. But even if you sign up for free, you will get this email once a week. We do not send you, inundate you with spam. We give you one idea per week. And this week's idea was related to the issue of building costs. There is much discussion about why house prices are so high. A big part of it is land prices because of all the zoning laws. We've discussed that to death. Another part of it is just a lot more people have come into the country, and that increases demand. But another part of the puzzle is the cost of building houses, right? That has just increased. And one reason is the cost of actually getting builders and tradies in. We have a skills shortage. And this is sometimes creates this chicken and egg argument where people say we need fewer immigrants to put less pressure on housing demand. And then the other side of the argument says, yeah, but we need more builders to build more houses. We don't have enough, so we need to bring in skilled migrants from overseas. And then the other side says, yes, but those skilled migrants then need to live in houses. And the conversation keeps going in circles. So look, there's some truth to both sides, but I'm not here to adjudicate that argument. This newsletter for this week looked at an idea for how we can incentivize more builders and construction tradies to enter the workforce in Australia without requiring foreign migrants. And one answer here is there are plenty of people who have got to the end of their normal working life and have retired, who have the ability and desire to stay in the workplace for at least part-time, right? A couple of days a week in some sort of role if they can. And our tax transfer system as it currently stands strongly discourages that. Now, I should first say, look, of course, in construction, in a lot of trades, there can be a lot of back-breaking work and some people don't want to keep going. Fine. I'm not talking about forcing them. Nothing in here would take away anything anyone already has. But there is certainly a subset of people in their 60s and 70s who would like to stay associated with the workforce. And some of them have the skills we need in construction. And we are currently telling them not to stay in the workforce, basically. The tax transfer system is you can only earn up to about $4,000 or $5,000 as a pensioner before you start paying tax. And you can only earn up to, I think, about $12,000 before you start losing your pension. And when you lose your pension, you lose it at 50 cents in the dollar. So above that $12,000, you earn another $1,000, you lose $500 in the pension. So you combine that loss of pension with the tax you're paying, and you have very little remaining incentive to stay in the workforce, right? So you do all of that work, government keeps most of the money for you. So the idea, and it's not a new idea, is why don't we adjust that incentive? The National Seniors Association of Australia have said, well, why don't you just let people keep working and not lose their pension? That may be a way to go. If that's too big a change, then one thing to consider is let's just pick industries where we admit we are short of people. We can start with construction. It'll be a fairly small case study, an example to see if the idea works. And it's probably a case where you're not going to have massive impacts on the budget because we're not dealing with millions of people entering the workforce here. So we could see if it worked. And then what you could do is say, why don't we make it so that instead of you can earn up to 12,000, how about you can earn up to 50,000, which would be the equivalent for some people of 1 or 2 days a week work, depending on what sort of job they have, how well they used to be paid. But that would allow you to have some part-time work without losing your pension and would make it possible for these people of retirement age to have that choice. And then they could turn down the choice, but they have the option of buffering their own income. Their own lifestyle would be improved by $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a year. Good for them. We would have more workers in the industry where we are crying out for workers. And the impact on the budget would be negligible because most of these people are currently not in the workforce. They're already receiving the pension. Allowing them to continue receiving the pension while they work doesn't hurt the government. Now, there could be some impact on the government as a rounding error in either direction. It's likely to not be big in either direction. So the main impact is a few more workers and some older Australians with a few more opportunities. And that seems to me like an idea worth pursuing. And now a slight innovation on that, or a modified version, which gets you to roughly the same position, would be to make it so that you can earn more money as a pensioner without losing welfare, earn more money without paying tax. So increase the effective tax-free threshold from what is about $5,000 now for a pensioner up to $50,000, and make it so that you lose the pension more slowly. So that's probably the way I would like to go about it, but that's just getting into the details of how you would implement it. It's roughly a similar idea to the one I mentioned before of just allowing them to work more without losing their pension. Now, a few things to note. One Nation has already taken on board a policy very similar to this. The Liberals have already taken on board a watered down version. If you can currently work up to 12,000 without losing your pension, I think the Liberals would allow you to earn up to, I think it's 18,000 or 17,000, something like that, without losing your pension. Actually, it might even be 20. But the point is, it's not enough, right? So the Liberals need to toughen up their version of that policy. But whichever way the policy looks, and there's a few variations of it, the main point is I think there's a win-win out of this without really hurting the government's bottom line. And unless there is a good counter argument that I haven't run across soon, let's hope the politicians are paying attention, because this looks like this won't be a panacea. This won't solve everything. This is not going to, for once and for all, solve the immigration debate, but it could be a small step in the right direction. And let's keep taking small steps in the right direction, because that's how you end up in a better position. So that is the idea. Let's hope they steal it or improve it. Gene, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth considering. I mean, I think like the whole idea of immigration being, of us needing all of these, the immigrant labor to help, build the houses. I just don't think that really is sound, is it? I mean, there's such a small proportion of, people who get visas are actually construction workers. So that's not really an argument for immigration. I think we have the argument, we look at the pros and cons. Other issues are more significant than that one. With construction,
that's the same point that RW makes here. You'd actually have to bring in the proper skilled migrants. How many of them were actually builders? Yes.
Oh, I don't know, a couple of thousand or something. I mean, it's a very small number. It's very small, and we've got. It's an issue of training too, isn't it? I mean, we're just not. Like once upon a time, we used to train lots of people in construction trades, but then our generation, we were encouraged to go to university and study. And I mean, I think that's generally good advice. However, we didn't have as many people qualifying for trades. I remember
terrible advice. Don't go to uni, people. It ruins your brain.
Well, I think it was good when we were there, John. I think it was before all of the. I think it's much more ideological now. We've
also got credential inflation, right? I think when it was a situation where 3 or 4 years got you a degree and you could head into the world. Okay, now people are spending 7 or 8 years there. I mean, like I did. I mean, I spent far too long there. So don't do what I say, not what I do. But yeah, sorry, I sidetracked you, Gene. I was just being cheeky at the university's expense.
I mean, if we've basically got to get that system right again and make sure that we're charging appropriately for university places. We're doing our best to encourage people to study trades and just rebalancing things, because at the moment they're out of whack and we don't have enough skilled people. The idea that we rely upon bringing in people from overseas, that's just mad, because we should be developing our own skill base. That would be my that's my 50 cents on it.
Yes, well, the other thing, the very unpopular thought I have on it is, when we say we have a skills shortage, it presupposes some bureaucrat knows the exact amount of skills we're supposed to have in all the various different parts of the economy. I suspect those bureaucrats are overestimating themselves. Everyone thinks there's a shortage of everything they want more of. That's not really how economists use the word shortage. You have to specify the other thing that there's too much of, that you want to reallocate. So there's some of this, I use the language, right? Because we're caught in a political dynamic where the language is kind of set. But occasionally it's worth stepping back and asking, is this language actually biasing the nature of the conversation? But I do think there's a comment here, I think, from Michelle Cullen that I think really is very important. It's underdone. No, I'm not sure. I think we probably do need more builders, but I think that's less red tape. Kess, I think your L key is broken on your keyboard, Michelle. But Kess red tape, what helps? Look, this one is hard to achieve because everyone says less red tape and they nod along. What does it mean? It means basically lower standards. Like, don't require that X, Y, and Z to be done on the house. Like, to make a dramatic example that is not realistic at all, but back in the day, it wasn't required you had toilets in the house. People had outhouses. Now, realistically, you got to have a toilet in your house, but you get the idea that adding these extra requirements, now they have to have 2 bathrooms. They need to be X size. You need to have this fitting and that fitting. And all of these requirements make the house better. Probably. I mean, I haven't looked through all of them, but undoubtedly there's a good reason for each of them. But each of them comes with a cost. And people who can afford all of the odds and ends would love to pay for it and have the best quality house they could get. But there are people out there that would just love to have a house. And if they have to cut some corners and have a worse kitchen and a worse bathroom, and the bathroom and the laundry shoved together with taps going in the wrong places, there are some people out there that would just accept that trade-off to be able to afford the outcome. There's plenty of stories from people my age or older who can tell you about the first place they bought would not pass inspections today, could not be built today. I'm pretty sure that's true of the first place I bought, that it couldn't be built today. But it was built and it was cheap and I could afford it, and I got onto the ladder, the housing ladder, and then I sold it and bought somewhere better, et cetera, et cetera. Young people are being denied that opportunity because of the housing standards, because of the red tape. But it's a very hard political argument to make, because imagine going to the public saying, I'm here campaigning for lower quality bathrooms for your house. That's tricky.
Yeah. But I mean, John, the reality is that the actual cost of the house is the smallest part of the cost of the property, isn't it? Right? I mean, it's the land that is the most valuable, and that's what we've really throttled and we've restricted. We've restricted the ability to make use of the land as effectively as we can and build up and build duplexes and 6-packs, etc., in a whole bunch of areas.
There's truth to that, but I had previously run that argument that this is a story about land value because of zoning, and that is certainly part of the story, as is the immigration point. But I think it has been underestimated how important the increase in the cost of construction has played in recent house prices, because it's not just the total value. The land value is still worth more than the house value in most situations. But house construction costs have been going up quite quickly.
Yes.
If you want to look at the increase in the price of a house, a lot of that's being driven by the fact that a lot of construction labor is being crowded out into government projects. And then all of the regulation is requiring everything is done to a certain standard, which is requiring more and more labor and better materials. So I think there is all 3 of those arguments are important in this. The land zoning, the building regulations, and the amount of immigrants coming in. And not just immigrants, but the amount of housing demand, right? Which is partly immigration and partly the fact that people are having smaller and smaller families. So go get married, stay married, and have kids. At the end of that lecture.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So questions have been flowing in here while we've been saying that. So should we go back to the questions?
Got some great questions, great comments. I love the elite over production. Well, I like elite over production. Oh, did I show that? Yes.
Yeah, you did at the same time I did, so it took it down.
This is the whole point. I think this was in response to the point about how we've encouraged everyone to study at university rather than go and get a trade. And then is it Peter Turchin who has that thesis that this is what causes the instability? If you have too many people who study at the elite colleges, and then they think, oh, I've got a right to be at the top, to be in the establishment, but there's only so many positions, and the others become disgruntled and become communists or whatever, like Lenin. And
they need to create a new hierarchy, a new elite hierarchy to challenge the old elite hierarchy, because they've been told that they were special since they were born, and the current system is not making them special. So you got to kick over the chessboard and start again.
Yeah, interesting thesis, that one.
Rick Matt here, echoing what I was saying before. I live in a house built in 1950 that no council would allow you to build today. Starter houses are not allowed anymore. Very true. The difficulty is, help me find a way to make that argument in a way that convinces the normies. Another one, that's so true. I moved into an old cane barracks in Cairns. I see that that could be pretty cool, living in a cane barracks. Right. Should we go back to some of the star any of those ones that come up, Gene, that you see that are worthy of being starred? We'll go back and quickly run through some of the earlier comments. Oh, okay.
I think it's something to track. I don't think we've got any idea about how many it is at the moment, but there's been a big uptake of that 5% deposit scheme. So it was running. They were writing about just under 40,000 guarantees per annum, and at the current run rate, they're writing around 75, maybe it could get up to 80,000 per annum. We haven't got the latest numbers yet, but they've almost doubled the number of guarantees they're writing. So we could be talking significant numbers of people, like thousands, maybe over 10,000. Who knows? But look, it depends on how big the property market downturn is. If it's large enough, it could be a whole bunch of people who are getting into trouble. Not just the people.
Suggestion. Sorry, finish the point if you want, but
not just the.
From RW. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was changing topic to this comment, but finished. I didn't know if you had a trailing into that sentence.
No, I've forgotten it. Go ahead. Let's move on.
I've killed you, Gene. Sorry about that. My fault. RW suggests we get Heiser. Heiser says he's a small time. He's bigger than us. YouTuber from Australia, and he rants about such things. He'd be good. Heiser, if you're out there, open invitation. Hit us up. Maybe I'll try and reach out to him. I don't have a line on him. If anyone has a line on him, tell him he's got an open invite to come on the show. We'll talk building regulations, fun stuff, scintillating stuff. Back to a few of the earlier ones. Well, this is just when we were talking the LNP. I guess the LNP is probably not going to get a hell of a lot of love from our regular crowd, given the way things are going. And yeah, I do feel a bit of sympathy for the machine men. They cop a lot of crap and they deserve a lot of it. But a lot of them are trying to protect a domain where they think they're doing the right thing. And I think in the past, some of them used to be doing the right thing. I just think they've misread modern politics. I think politics has changed. You see this all around the world, right? It's hard to look at Farage in the UK, Trump in the US, AFD in Germany, Hertvelders in the Netherlands, Maloney in Italy, etc., etc., etc. The rise of one nation in Australia now, finally getting around to Australia joining the trend, and think that politics is still politics as usual. So I think these machine men sometimes are very valuable, and you need people like that to get an institution to run well. So you don't want to burn them all at the stake, but I think they have misread our current political moment. And I invite those machine men to, and machine women for that matter, to reconsider digging their heels in defending an old system. Come to the good side. Be machine men for the good guys. You know, we need your powers on the side of light. This, I think, is Taylor saying that the LNP's refusal to even debate abortion is, in her mind, a huge moral indicator. I think it's just political cowardice, right? I mean, they think that talking about abortion will spook the voters. They only just got in last time. They don't want to lose it. They want to get reelected. There's nothing more important than a certain subset of politicians to be reelected. They've worked out, they've got their pollsters to find out what creates a negative environment for our political party. Talk about abortion does. Let's stop talk about abortion. So I just think it's political cowardice, and there is too much political cowardice. I've said it many times before. The ingredient in politics that is undersupplied at the moment is courage. We need more of it.
Yeah.
I think voters are being attracted to it. So courage, even when it's wrapped up with stupid policy, is attracting people these days. So we need people with good policy to show more courage, or we're going to have courageous idiots run the show.
Yeah, I asked Graeme about that because I'm just wondering whether, like, to what extent that's driving the division. Because I know Amanda Stoker she's very passionate. I mean, she would want to debate the issue, and I mean, she's incredibly talented. I mean, you can see her in a much more prominent role there. Like, to what extent, if they do give her a more prominent role, and they may well have to, because Amanda Cam she may have to resign because she's had migraines, but I mean, who knows? She's under all this stress with the child safety issue, so she might be gone, and then there could be a spot for Amanda, but then Amanda could be she could be a very vocal voice on that issue. So I'll be interested to see how that sort of plays out the next few years.
Look, I don't think abortion is the driving issue behind Graeme's pitch. I think he was genuinely confused. I don't think he cares strongly about the issue, so he'd be surprised to hear it's a drive. But it is. There's an element of what you're saying that's true. The people motivated to increase internal democracy do tend to come from the conservative wing of the party. The party has a big conservative base, and it has a bunch of what you got mods, machine men, the people who read the opinion polls more correctly or more vociferously. And the machine men are worried about the conservatives. If they all have a voice, then the party will become more conservative. And the conservatives have a vested interest in pushing up democracy, even if they don't believe in democracy, because most people inside the LNP agree with them. So while their ideas are popular, you agree with democracy. So there is an element of conservatives inside the LNP prefer the Democratic pitch. But I think there is an objectively good case for the Democratic pitch. It takes away the fact that the party is only run by people who look at opinion polls, which I think takes away the purpose of having a political party. If all you are is a mirror for opinion polls, let AI with opinion polls run the country. But there is a confluence of factors here. There are the people who genuinely just believe in democracy that have teamed up with the people who would prefer the party to be more conservative and have concluded that a Democratic party would be more conservative. So that's where there is some truth to what you're saying. But I don't think abortion is the primary part motivating that, although that would be a distinguishing feature between the conservatives and the mods. But yes, this is probably just going to the issue of what the LNP could do. Certainly true. Lift the ban on uranium mining. That nearly passed Parliament in New South Wales recently, but didn't quite get up. Should be passed in Queensland as well. Here is a suggestion that I love: term limits. Not on politicians, but on public servants, or both, really. But I think there'd be some value in that. And people would say, look, you lose efficiencies. You do lose efficiencies. You've got to weigh off things. There's no silver bullet or utopia here. You lose some efficiencies, but you would also lose the vested interests getting just ensconced in a powerful corner of our system and being able to build that power ever more. It would take away your ability to build these little power nodes where they're not supposed to be. And I think that's a trade-off worth making. Rick Matt is a bit more optimistic than I am. I think libertarianism is correct. I don't know if that makes it inevitable. I don't think anything is inevitable. You have to work and fight for it. That's why we come to you. One night a week and run the ATA and do the work we do, because I think you actually have to put in the work if you want a chance of success. Nothing is inevitable.
Yeah, I'd like to think it is, but the technology, unfortunately, is pushing us in the opposite direction, isn't it? I mean, the technology makes it easier to have mass surveillance, to have, try and manipulate people on a mass scale. Just keep tabs on them, interfere with their lives. I mean, the technology is pushing in the opposite direction.
Well, I don't know. I think there's always a technological arms race, right? So if technology has given the state an advantage over controlling citizens, there becomes a demand and therefore a niche for someone to create technologies that enhance privacy or coordination without the state, which is what Bitcoin and blockchain originally was. And then when those technologies come along, people, I think, overreact and go, woohoo, we've won. Libertarianism is inevitable. But of course, that creates an incentive for the advocates of state power to also start using that technology and coming up with other. So there's like a technological arms race that different sides are winning at different times. And I don't think the outcome in either direction is inevitable. Hence the need for us to show up here and do this, Gene, and fight the good fight.
I agree with you, but if I think about the future, I mean, when I was young, I loved Blake Seven, the Terry Nation show. And I mean, essentially, you had the future was just run by this sort of, semi-fascistic empire. And it's like, and it's all justified in terms of, we're fighting terrorism, or it's all about your security, and that's where we're heading, and that's the real risk. And we're just going to have the technology that helps, the authorities crack down on us. That's where we're heading. That's what we've got to resist. I agree with you.
I share the fear, but this is the way I'd frame the fear. As long as there is a place to escape to, systems that are structurally unsound will eventually hit a crisis point. And if people can escape to other places, those unsound systems will collapse and get replaced, and then you will cycle and cycle. And then, if you get rid of all the unsound systems and you had a utopia, the bad systems would rebuild. It is a constant cycle. There is no eternal victory, right? It's the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. I'm probably bastardizing the saying, but you know the idea, right? So the cycle will keep going with trends towards more basically fascist style systems, and then trends back towards more freedom style systems, as long as there is a place to escape to. My fear is if you did this at a one world level, and I know that sounds very conspiratorial, but I mean, we are trending towards greater centralization of power.
Yeah.
As you centralize systems, if there is nowhere to escape to, you lose that counterbalance. Now, my big fear is the centralization of political power. As long as it's decentralized, we can live through a lot of shit and come out the other end better for it. If political power is centralized too much, there's nowhere to escape to, which is why probably part of the solution, God bless him, Elon Musk, get us to Mars. Right? And if we start spreading the world all around the solar system, we'll have more places to escape to. But we're probably getting a bit too sci-fi now.
Well, why doesn't he do something here on Earth? I mean, I'm surprised. Like Ayn Rand.
Indeed, he bought Twitter.
Well, I mean, yeah, but whatever happened to the whole seasteading concept, or the charter cities and all of that? I mean, I know they've had sort of, there's that one in Honduras or so that didn't go very well.
Yeah.
But like, why can't we? I'm just surprised he doesn't try and use his money to set something like that up. That's where there's a really significant opportunity. No, but anyway, that's his money, and SpaceX is
probably part of it is you have to be able to set them up sufficiently far away from the power of nearby governments to stomp on you. Look, I agree with you. It'd be worth putting more into charter cities. I like that idea. I think there's real legs in that. But I like anything that decentralizes political power, because I think that is the issue.
Yeah.
Of course, I'd say that. I don't know what this comment is yet. Libs won't get there as they have no right. They're all out of indoctrinated uni these days. Indoctrinated uni. We go back to the uni debate. No people.
Well, I think it's an important part of it, isn't it? Because if you think about why is it that we've lost faith in our civilization, I mean, it must be because of a lot of the ideas coming out of the academy, right? It has to be. Why else have we sort of suddenly adopted all of these, ideas that do so much harm to our society? It has to be the universities.
Yeah, well, I believe they're a net detriment to society now because of the overeducation, the declining actual return on university education. Like the human capital argument is basically, it's run out. The marginal return now is close to zero. And so you're getting all the ideological bias for none of the economic benefits. So I think they need to be wound back or burnt to the ground, but maybe wound back would be more politically correct.
Metaphorically, John.
Metaphorically, of course. Metaphorically. I could get in trouble for that. Or only burnt to the ground after you've bought them and removed all the people, so that everyone's safe. But yeah, I think that's part of the problem. I don't think it's the only part of the problem, but I think we've got an issue of our cultural elites don't like us anymore. And I think universities are part of our cultural elites. But so is the media, big parts of the media. So is the bureaucracy. There's like a academia, bureaucracy, media triumvirate of all of the people who think they're better than us, that sip their lattes in the city talking about how bad Western civilization is and how they'd be able to perfectly plan a grand utopia. And yeah, anyway, politicians are coming out indoctrinated. Wait a second, didn't I get that? Straight from unis into the parties, yes. This is going earlier to the issue of getting people to join political parties. Taylor says, so many of my friends don't care, don't value the right to vote. True, we don't have a community mindset anymore. We don't have a civic mindset. I would argue that this is part of the great sort of politics has replaced community. It has crowded it out. The 19th century was the century of dog-eat-dog capitalism, let the market rip, no regulations, trade's gone crazy, all of those cliches. Those cliches, like most cliches, came about for a reason. There's a lot of truth. It was the most free market-ish, laissez-faire kind of system we've seen. During that system, People were community joiners. They were engaged in their family, in their neighborhood, in their community. They joined. They joined political parties. They joined friendly societies. They joined local sports teams, music teams, churches, co-ops. People were joining all of these sort of what Burke called little platoons of society. I think Tocqueville, when he came to America and he wrote his great book, Democracy in America, when he said democracy, he didn't mean everyone gets a vote. He meant everyone was engaged in some sort of community group. Everyone was involved in these little networks of people upon people. And the 20th century is basically the story of the state bit by bit replacing the market. And the hidden part of that story that people, I think, underappreciate is it has also been the state replacing the community sector. The dog-eat-dog capitalism coexisted with the strongest family and community sector that humanity's ever had. And when we destroyed the market, or undermined the market, it's not totally destroyed. When we undermine the market, we have undermined community at the same time. Not because the market and community is the same thing, but because a strong state inevitably and inherently, I would argue, undermines both. Right? So the market and the community sector aren't the same thing, right? They both have pros and cons. They work different ways, and they work effectively in different environments. But they are both the victim of a strong and ever-strengthening state. And I think we've seen people lose the incentive to join. The other comment I would make on this, Taylor, is, and again, go and read The Myth of the Rational Voter by Tyler Cohen?
Brian Kaplan.
Brian Kaplan, sorry. Brian Kaplan, yes, I got the wrong economist. But go and read that. People need to understand public choice theory. This isn't even the point of Kaplan's book. This is just public choice theory writ large. Your vote doesn't matter. And so there is a thing called rational ignorance. If people didn't know about politics because they were, ignorant for no good reason, we could fix that by education. But here's the thing. The ignorance of politics we have in this country and in every country, it's not irrational. It is rational ignorance. And the reason is you have finite time in your life. Time is a resource, and it is a finite resource, and you need to decide, should I spend this time getting educated about my work, my job, spending time with my family, going on holiday, working harder, studying harder, doing all of these things that add value to my life? Or should I spend my time studying the nuances of the policies of all these different political parties and working out which one's better? When once I've worked that out, I have one vote, 1 in 16 million, and my vote will never change the outcome of anything. Now, everyone hates it when I say that, but hating that I say it doesn't make it not true. It's an objective reality that if you take every vote you ever do in your life and do this, just take it away or make it the reverse, not one vote in this country will ever change the outcome. So if you've got finite time, should you spend your time improving your real life, spending time with your real family and your real friends, working harder to make an extra bit of money so you can buy that thing you want? There's all a real payoff to the way you're spending that time. Or you could get really knowledgeable about politics and then there's no payoff, which is why I want people to learn more, right? I'm not saying any of this because I want it to be true, but realistically, it has to be driven by either an enjoyment, which is what's motivated a lot of us to get involved in politics. I find economics and politics genuinely interesting, or civic mindedness, or a desire to do good. But we have to understand a lot of people are rationally ignorant, and any solution that involves us stopping them being rational is not a sustainable solution. You have to factor in the rational behavior of people. And if ignorance is rational, you are never going to have a mass democracy of everybody making nuanced decisions. And we have to factor that into our decision-making in terms of what is the best system, which is one of the reasons I am less of a fan of democracy than Gene is. But putting that aside, what your solution is, we have to factor in the truth of rational ignorance. And we can't hate the people for following their incentives. We can hate the incentives. We can hate the people who put in place those incentives. But once you put in place those incentives, we should factor in that people will follow them and not get angry at them for following them. That's a very long rant on public choice theory, but that's part of my answer to you there, Taylor. I'm skipping through a few of these. Apologies, there's lots of good comments here, but we're over the 2-hour mark. So I'm just going through to see if I can... here's an interesting idea from RDub. In terms of immigration, foreign students could study in Australia via Zoom. There's no need to live in the country when in reality they're lodging permanent residency. Yeah. So if they're really here for the education, do a distance education, see if they're still willing to pay the fees. That is an insightful and cheeky point. Michelle is making the same point John Ruddock makes. How about we just pause it for a while? Look, I don't know if a complete pause on people coming into the country is actually functionally doable. I would say we could put a pause on giving people permanent residency, and we could put a pause on giving people citizenship. And then we should stop propping up failing universities with this influx of fake students. So I think I would end up in a very similar position to you, though. I just want to, for accuracy's sake, I don't think it's true that we could have zero immigration. Without, if you're going to sell Australians, they're not allowed to marry foreigners. I mean, that's going to be tricky. We're going to renegotiate the CER relationship we have with New Zealand, where Australians and Kiwis can just swap countries whenever they want. I don't know if our agreement with New Zealand and allowing us to marry foreigners have to be sacrificed. But I agree with generally the point that winding back the mass migrant takeover of Australia.
So, John, the other week, when we looked at the latest population data, we saw that of the population increase we've had over the last year, it was roughly for every one additional Australian through natural increase, births less deaths, there were 3 additional Australians or 3 additional people living in Australia from net overseas migration. Should we be? Do you think these things should be in balance? I mean, would you set a net overseas migration target based on trying to balance the net overseas migration with natural increase, or have natural increase higher? Is that a guide to it?
I don't know if that would be. Look, that's probably one input you'd take in making the decision. I don't think if that would be my driving thing, right? Part of my opinion on this is very politically incorrect, so I always get in trouble for saying it, and then everyone calls us names. But I think the question of immigration isn't just about the total numbers. It's also about the pre-existing cultural compatibility of the groups coming in. I think we can absorb a higher number of immigrants if those immigrants are already very similar to us. If they speak our language, if they have like a similar religious background, they don't have to be devout, but if they have a similar religious background, a similar cultural background, a similar instinct about the way you interact with society, about the sort of families you form and the way you interact with your parents and kids. If we have these similar instinctive behavioral traits, then you can incorporate quite a lot of foreigners quite easily without fundamentally changing what your society is. If you're bringing in people very different, then I don't think it should be 0, but you have to bring them in much slower, or you risk them changing you and not you changing them. And to some degree, change is inevitable, and I don't mind a bit of change. It's you can't mind a bit of change because it's going to happen. But I worry about with the rate of immigration is that we're bringing in so many people very different to us, and it's fundamentally changing the nature of our country so quickly. People are rebelling. Yeah, and I think it's one way or another, the outcome won't be pretty. I don't think you have to have 0 immigration, but you have to have, I think, much more mindfulness of the social cohesion impacts of that immigration. And that isn't a fixed number, right? So I think, what I was implicitly saying before about New Zealand is I really don't think if we bring in a bunch of Kiwis, it's a big problem. So we don't need 0 immigration. We could have zero immigration plus Kiwis. I don't know, they're already here, yes. But there would be other countries where I think we should be biased on culture. And at the moment, we pride ourselves of not being biased on culture. We're not biased about who comes into the country. We just talk about the raw numbers. And look, perhaps that's the nature of the political situation we're in, where we have to talk like that. But if I was dictator, I would have a discriminatory immigration policy based on culture and language and maybe pre-existing religious upbringings. Not current faith, just your religious background noise in your life, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think we've had that conversation in a previous chat, haven't we? So, yeah.
I'll see how much trouble I get in for that. Last comment. This is what we need. President Javier Milei. We'll get there once Jean is elected.
I think Sean Humphreys is more suited for the president, Javier Milei.
You can make me the treasurer.
Charismatic libertarian. Absolutely.
If you got a chainsaw. have to grow my sideburns. I think that's probably Rick that keeps making that mention that I did too. There are, I think, 30 comments that have come in while I was putting those up, and I don't have time to read them all to find out which ones are good. So I apologize. Yes, New Zealand is the 7th state. Well, we need more than 7. We need 30 states. Grow some sideburns. Not until you add the H back to my name, Rick. You've taken the H away. And yes, to all of the rest of government, we say afuera. I think that's a good spot to end it on. Gene, as I always ask at the end of these sessions, is there anything from this chat that you found interesting or worthy of further consideration?
I'm just wondering whether they're focusing on the right issues in the LNP. I mean, Graham's sort of very much focused on the internal democracy side of things. I mean, I think, yeah, that seems fair enough. Should they be debating fundamental policy issues instead and how they respond to One Nation? I mean, maybe this is an essential way for them to do this, in his view. I just wonder if they're focused too much internally on their own sort of disputes rather than thinking about how they can respond to the existential threat coming from One Nation. What do you think, John? I mean,
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of truth in what you're saying, but I do think at some stage, if the Liberal Party is going to be a functional force, it's going to have to democratize. So it is a fight worth having. It maybe seems like arguing about rearranging deck chairs at this point, but it's maybe this is the time when they can get it done. It also potentially provides a contrast to One Nation. If you can have a very real say about who is your candidate, who is your Senate candidate, who is your leader, parliamentary leader, by joining one party, and in the other party you don't get a say, that might end up being a distinguishing feature between the parties. We'll see. I mean, maybe it's a race now. If One Nation can democratize before the Liberal Party, we'll see who takes that lesson first. But look, I agree. It's not going to be the thing that brings back voters, but I think it is a fight worth having, and one in which I hope their forces for party internal democracy win. Hence, I thought it was worthwhile hearing what Graeme
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's all interesting. I just wonder how it's going to impact policy, and I'm interested in, what are the real differences between the McGrath faction and the other faction? I mean, what are there policy issues defining it, or is it personality issues? I was interested in that too, and I think we got to that. I think Graeme explained that reasonably well, so I was happy with that.
Indeed. Gene, thank you as always, and for you at home writing in all of those comments at the end and listening along, thank you very much for joining us once again. We do this once a week. We do this on Thursday evenings at 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Time, and we will be doing it again next week. So this is put together by the Australian Taxpayers Alliance. That's that little ATA banner you can see in the top right of your screen, I think hovering just over Gene's head. Please go and check out what the ATA is up to. Our Substack is Oz Taxpayers, austaxpayers.substack.com. Please go along and sign up. You can sign up for free, but if you have the money, then a couple of dollars a month helps us to keep the lights on. Also at our website, taxpayers.org.au, and that's another way to sign up if you are so inclined. So thank you for all of that. We will be back next week. Until then, everyone, stay happy and stay free.